Some of this will be put online later, so if you have friends, you want to catch up on it. Last week, we had kind of a family meeting, and I thought coming out of that family meeting, for people who may not have been there, or for just the sake of the church, I thought, what would I want to share? How would I share it? And I thought two things. If I were planting a church for the very first time, what do I think my opening series or sermon would be to that church as we launched off on ministry and work together? So that was one thought that went through my mind. The other thought that went through my mind was on the opposite side. What if I was leaving a church, which I'm not, just so you know, just a thought, unless you really want me to. No, I was kidding. What if I was leaving the church? What would be the message I would want that church to hear if I got one last word? And I was almost inspired by this, by Paul's work with the Ephesians that we see in the book of Acts. And when you see that, Paul really lays out, like he spent so much time with the Ephesians that when he was heading back to Jerusalem, and they begged him not to go because people were conspiring to have Paul arrested and killed. And they knew if he went back to Jerusalem, he was going to die. And Paul knew that as well. And so he wrestled with this dynamic. So the Ephesian church was just getting started, and they had leadership that Paul had trained and appointed. They're about 4 or 5 years old at this point. And then Paul is going to Jerusalem, and he knows that with these people that he's come to love so deeply, that this is probably his last message to them. And so I thought that's a pretty good context, maybe for this particular situation. And so we go into it. Can I get the back screen on? That would help me a little bit in just a moment. So I thought in this particular situation, let's go. So I want to talk about the heart and soul of Christianity. Like, what is the heart and soul of the Christian faith? If we go back through all kinds of different philosophies and worldviews, the ancient Greeks would say to be wise and know yourself. The Romans would say be strong and defend yourself. If you track hedonism, be sensuous. Enjoy yourself. If you tracked with modern psychology, be confident. Affirm yourself. If you went with modern humanism, be independent, true to yourself. But if you really wanted to get to the heart of Christianity, like what is the Christian faith about? And you watch the teachings of Jesus, and that's what we're going to do the next few weeks. So what does Jesus say about following him and being church together? Jesus would say, to look to others and to give yourself. I just heard Molly say that. She didn't even know what I was going to talk about today. That she heard this calling and was so compelled by Christ. Remember what she said? I grew up in church and then I heard this. And it became so compelling that she's giving of herself. What a perfect message for today. Right? The message of Christianity, like giving is at the heart of Christianity. Like we get so caught up sometimes that we get the idea of giving confused with fundraising. Right? Like if you listen to any kind of like public broadcast radio or television, how many campaigns a year do they run to keep your favorite shows on? And you got to call in. Man, I really love Perot. You guys don't know about the great classic British mysteries, do you? And you would watch, Agatha Christie mysteries on PBS. My grandmother would watch them all the time. Or this is my favorite cooking show. Or you go to KTIS. KTIS, where your monthly pledge is bringing joy to people. And they have the campaigns all the time. But at the heart of Christianity isn't fundraising. It's giving, generosity, one of our 6 G's. One of the things where we say living connected to Christ and His community is experienced by living generously. Generosity is at the core of Christianity. We see it so clearly in one of our favorite verses historically, John 3:16. For God so loved the world, He gave. He gave. And God is such a better giver than I am. Like sometimes I want to give stuff to my kids and then I put like this exception to it, right? I'll take you to ice cream if you're good in the store today. Who heard that one before? Yeah, both of you raise your hands. Sometimes Corey says it to me. If you behave yourself, I'll take you to ice cream is like my love language, right? So, but God He puts no exceptions on His gift. There's no caveats to it. It is freely given. For God so loved the world, He gave. Giving is at the heartbeat of the Christian faith. We are never more like God in character than when we give. I mean, think about it. Adam and Eve in Genesis chapter 3, they just completely rebelled against what God had said. We want nothing to do with you. We're going to do things our way. God says the moment you do that, you're going to die. And instead of dying, what does He allow them to do? They live. They are spiritually dead. They are forever separated from God. And you know what God does as the last act before those people are fully separated from Him? He gives. He clothes them. And He gives them a promise that one day your offspring are going to crush evil. And it wasn't over. See, we are never more like God than when we live generously. So I want to take a look at how giving is at the heartbeat of the Christian faith and how Jesus invites us to it. True giving begins with a cause. God did not send Jesus for no reason. When Jesus came, and we hear lots of words from Jesus as to why He came. He came to bear witness to the truth, He told Pilate. He came to seek and to save the lost, He told His disciples. On another occasion, He told them that He didn't come to be served, but to serve and to give His life as a ransom for many. See, God's purpose of giving, His generous gift of Jesus, was to rescue all of humanity, not only from sin and death, but also from ourselves. To call us to something greater, to give us life more abundant. That's the language of Jesus. Giving begins with a cause. I think of the book of Acts in chapter 2. The Holy Spirit falls one day while Peter and the others are preaching. We call it the day of Pentecost. Now, Pentecost was already a celebration day Pentecost was a day of celebration when the 10 Commandments came down from the mountain, and 50 days later, so the 50 days is what Pentecost celebrates. It just so happened to coincide. I love the way God works because you can't make this stuff up, right? The day of Pentecost falls 50 days after Jesus' resurrection. And not the law on tablets of stone coming down, but the Spirit of God who transforms everything falls on that same day. Coincidence? I don't think so. Part of the cause and the purpose? Absolutely. Thousands of people give their life to Jesus that day. The scripture will tell us in Acts chapter 2 that the church would grow in number of those who were believing in the good news on a regular, daily basis. And that sounds awesome. Like to go start a church with 3,000 people on the first day? That's pretty cool. And that every day your doors are open, it continues to grow, not because your programs are awesome, but because people are getting saved. That's really cool. But then there was a catch. Like everybody in the community hated them. The Romans hated them. The Jews hated them. And so they give everything to each other. They sell everything and support each other in a way that is just amazing to watch. And they gave themselves to the apostles' teaching, to the breaking of bread, which is probably communion, and some meals along the way, to serving each other, to fellowship together, to worshiping together. They gave themselves to the cause of telling other people about the good news, and it took all of their resources together to make that happen. But they didn't give just to nothing to keep their favorite radio program moving. They gave to a mission that was changing the world. So much so that when they would go to different cities, they were recognized as the people who were turning the world upside down. I would love to be accused as a church as positively flipping the Twin Cities on its head. Whatever you're doing is nuts, and we don't know what it is. We don't know if we're for or against it. Because the gospel, as clear as it can be, it challenges us, doesn't it? And it flips our world. And with life, when it comes to generosity and giving as a believer in Jesus, you can selfishly live for yourself, meagerly exist, and eventually die. My grandfather, he had that cliche, right? You know, there are two things that are true in this world, death and taxes. In that order. I mean, even after you die, Uncle Sam gets his portion, right? I never met anybody in any meeting or any place in any situation who said, I want to live an absolutely meager, meaningless life. No one's ever signed up for that application. A quiet life is different. Like Scripture tells us that we should actually set our attention to living a quiet life, being contented in life. But that life, that quiet life, is filled with crazy purpose. A purpose that is divinely given. I love Ephesians 2:10 on this. Like God has prepared good works for you in advance. Advance of what? Advance of you believing in Jesus? Yes. Advance of you graduating high school or college or maybe never? Yes. Good works prepared in advance. Advance before you drew breath. June 27th, about 1 o'clock in the afternoon, we had just crossed paths with our co-grandparents. Jay and Janet, Corey and I, we were at the hospital together and got to hold our grandbaby for the first time. It was beautiful. We lingered for a minute. The Prusmans were there a little bit earlier than us. And before we left, I prayed that prayer over Layla. God, before she drew her first breath, you had prepared good works for her to accomplish. Help her to walk in them. Help us to guide her towards them. You have purpose. To give your life to the greatest cause the world has ever known. There is no cause greater in the world than the redemption of mankind through Jesus. The gospel is the single greatest purpose in the world. Every company has a mission. Every company has a purpose. Ultimately, it's to make money. That's the goal of every company. I don't care what kind of philanthropy they try to tell you. Every company's aim is to make money. The entire goal of the Christian faith is the rescue of humankind through Jesus Christ. And it begins as people give of themselves to that cause. When we think about this, giving entails sacrifice. You think about all the things that require you to give something away. Now, there's a time, like my mother-in-law, she's getting ready to move in with us later this year. My mother-in-law is a garage sale junkie, right? Like, tell her I said that. She knows. It's more of a testimony for her. Like, your trash is her treasure somewhere. She will find something for someone somewhere at a yard sale. I have the largest possible Texas-labeled Starbucks mug that she found at a yard sale. I mean, it is seriously like that big of a Starbucks mug. You know how they have those been somewhere mugs at Starbucks and you can get all the cities or the universities or whatever? This one's Texas. And I think it's showing off. Right? I got it for 50 cents at a yard sale, she says. When you get something at a yard sale, that person isn't sacrificing the 50 cents you just paid for it. They don't want it. It's not a sacrifice. When you truly give and give of yourself, it requires sacrifice. Because you're giving of what you want. Your life, your way, but I'm giving that to a cause that's greater than me. Even if I've benefited from that cause, I'm giving myself back into it. Giving entails a sacrifice. I love the story of the widow that Jesus and his disciples are watching on this day. Jesus and his disciples in Luke 21, they're at the temple and they're watching the crowds. And as everybody's watching, all these people are coming in and they make sure to pull it out. 1, 2, 3. I don't know how you count. I don't know how you count ancient world money like that, right? Yeah, just make it rain at the offering plate, right? And here comes the widow. She has a coin. It's about that big, literally. It's about that big. I have some in my office. It's called a mite. And her money doesn't jiggle, nor does it fold. It just tink. That's all she has. Tink. And it was such a meaningful moment that Jesus elbows the guys. Hey, you should watch this. In what looked like a nothing special moment, Jesus comes back and recognizes her. And he says, truly, I tell you, the poor widow put more than all of them because they gave out of their excess and she gave out of what she had. It was a sacrifice for her to give. True giving is sacrifice. Like for Jesus to die, the Son is going to live into the Father's plan. But did you hear Jesus' words in the garden when he was praying before he was arrested, before he was crucified, before he died? If there's any other way, take it from me. But nevertheless, your will, Father, be done. Giving entails sacrifice. Giving leads to life. When Jesus talks about coming to give this life that is abundant and full and rich and satisfying, giving leads to life. We talk about this dynamic. Abundant living begins with abundant giving. And I don't mean like, here you go, you put some money in the plate today and you're getting a Corvette tomorrow. I don't mean that. I saw that. I kind of feel that same way sometimes. Daggone. I can't fit a Corvette anyway, but still it'd be nice sometimes. What I mean by this statement, do you know how freeing it is to not be owned by stuff? Do you know how freeing it is to not be owned by paper in your back pocket? By the growth chart on your Fidelity account? To not be stricken by that, to be owned by that? I could never be a day trader. Like I have ADHD and I have that the kind of impulsive kind that just reacts, but it also gets like hyper focused on stuff. And Corey, bless her heart, she has to remind me sometimes, Jeremy, this is one of those ADHD focus moments. You need to let it go. And it can range from all kinds of stuff, like finding a new countertop for Anna Grace at their house, or looking for dishwashers for Daniel and Caitlin, or all kind, like collecting Pokemon with Mary and Christina. Like it goes to all kinds of stuff. If I was a day trader, I'd be sunk. But Jesus talks about freedom. And when we live a freely giving, generous life, we're not strapped and shackled by stuff. The air is a lot cleaner when it's not tainted by that kind of captivity. When you can breathe free, Jesus says to his disciples, give, and it will be given to you. Now here's the catch. For the measure you use, it will be used to measure back to you. So, think about the widow for a minute. And the people who were giving out of their excess. The measure, God, I'll give you my leftovers. Cool. God gives you back his leftovers. You give me second fiddle. Is this really what you're looking for? The widow gave of everything. I would love to have a conversation with that widow about what it meant to have daily bread. Did she go hungry? Was she always provided food? I would love to know the answer to that question, because I would argue that that daily bread was always met. That she gave of everything, and I would argue that she lacked in nothing. And that the people who gave the excess probably had a great desire for more and were dissatisfied. Giving leads to life because it creates freedom. Giving produces true joy. You ever buy a present for somebody, like you know that present, and you can't wait to give it to them because you're really excited about it? You know that when they get it, they're going to be just off the charts excited. So you're already off the charts excited. I gave Corey a gift one time I wasn't so excited about for her to get. It was a DVD player with a movie she didn't care anything about, Disney's Hercules, and it was her birthday present. And sometimes we still talk about that, and most of the time she laughs about it. I gave myself a present on her birthday. It's a bad idea, just saying. Very bad idea. It was, yeah. That did not produce true joy. Oh, thank you. It could have been Star Trek steak knives for all she cared at that moment. Right? But when you really give something to somebody, it's a whole different conversation. Like when you think about that person and you get just that right thing. I remember a couple of years ago, I took the Littles Christmas shopping. And they had to pick out gifts and trying to help a kid think about being thoughtful towards somebody else. And Mary Jane, we were at the Five Below. And Mary Jane finds this present, and her eyes light up, and she takes in it big, oh, this is going to be perfect for Anna Grace. And I was like, yes, it will. Absolutely perfect. It was a tabletop Mr. Wiggly. You know those guys that advertise, shop here, buy a car here? Battery-operated little fan, turn it on, whoop, it pops up and smiles and wiggles everywhere. This is the most perfect gift I've ever seen, and you were so excited to give it, and Anna Grace was excited to receive it. Giving produces true joy. You feel it. People don't give because it hurts. It's one of my least favorite things that I heard I didn't grow up in a Christian tradition. And when I started going to church, I was 18, 19 years old. And I would hear people say this. You got to give till it hurts. That makes it a sacrifice. I was like, what? Give till y'all people are crazy. Like that's like going out and smashing my finger with a hammer. That also hurts. I don't want to do that. I don't go out to, Corey, I'll be right back. I'm going to go smash my thumb with a hammer today. Bang! It's happened before on accident. It's not good. Sacrifice and pain are two different things. We do things because we find joy in it. Giving produces joy. And so we give to that. Jesus says, right, it is more blessed to give than to receive. Why is it more blessed? It creates freedom, produces peace, allows for joy. It is more blessed to give than to receive. To think about someone, to put your attention on them, to watch them. It produces joy. When we give of ourselves, our heart is changed. When our heart is changed, the heart of Christ shows through. We become those very witnesses of the good news through the lives that we live because we're living connected to Jesus. Giving is at the heart of the Christian message.